on this trek. However, behind the scenes now, Martha Webb Campkin and these two sisters got together and they went back to Captain Willie and they said, "We will help the widow Campkin with her 5 children if you will let us go with your handcart company." And he finally relented. And so these two sisters and my second great-grandmother with her 5 children gathered together and they came across the plains together. Now, let me go back one. Thomas Young was following along in the Abraham Smoot wagon train following the Willie Handcart Company. And Brigham Young had told, Captain Willie had said, he was 19 years old. He says, "You keep an eye on that widow with those 5 children. And if you can help them along the way." Well, they get to Utah, and Brigham Young goes to Thomas Young, they weren't related, and said, "I want you to marry that 36-year-old widow with the 5 children." And you can imagine what kind of eyebrows that might raise. But he did. He did, and then he also married one of her daughters, and that's where I come from in my line. But anyway, they came through, and Emily Hill got married, and her last name was Woodmansey, and she wrote a poem called "As Sisters in Zion." And that is the story of these 2 young sisters and my great-great-grandmother. So when you sisters sing that in Relief Society, and I don't know if it'll be in the new hymn book or not, but I hope it is, but that has always meant a lot to me, and how else would I ever know that if somebody hadn't written that story down? Now that picture that you're looking at of those 2 young sisters, Elder Craig Christensen of the 70, his wife is a descendant of Emily Hill Woodmansey. And she commissioned that painting to be done of those 2 sisters. It's a representation of them. It's not actual pictures or painted from pictures of them. But what a sweet thing that is. My son found that information and he went to Sister Christensen and got permission to have that duplicated. And so each of our family members have a picture of those 2 women sisters. Yes?
Sister Christensen is my cousin.
Okay. Yeah, that's fun. This is fun to have that connection here. So anyway, that was one of the stories of Martha Webb Campkin. I praise her. I almost worship her for her perseverance, and I'm looking forward to the day when I can greet her and express my appreciation for her and all the things that she went through. Peter Nebeker was another one of my early ancestors. He came west and he lived next to Brigham Young. And Brigham Young Jr. had a dog. And that dog, he would go outside and Brigham Young Jr. would sick that dog on Peter's chickens. And it would maul a couple of chickens, and sometimes it would kill a chicken or something. And so finally Peter had had enough, and he says, "Listen, young man, you sick that dog on my chickens one more time and I'm going to shoot it." And the young man said, Brigham Young's son, he's not going to shoot my dog. Well, he sicked his dog on the chickens, and Peter shot his dog. And so Peter gets called to the president's office with Brigham Young Jr. And he thought his life was over. He was going to be kicked out of the church and all else would fail. He goes to Brigham Young's office, and he comes in there and he turns to his son, Brigham Young Jr., and says, "What happened?" He says, "He shot my dog." He turns to Peter and says, "What happened?" He says, "I told him if he sicked his dog on my chicken one more time, I'd shoot his dog." Brigham Young turned to Brigham Young Jr. and said, "I know Peter Nebeker. He's never told a lie on his wife. I implicitly trust him, and you better be quiet about him shooting your dog." And so, a wonderful story, but where would I get that story if somebody hadn't recorded it? And so it's just a marvelous thing. Peter married Elizabeth Jane Davies, and she dies in 1851. So then Peter marries her sister, Mary Maria Davies, in 1852 in Brigham Young's office. And then Brigham Young had his new wife, be the proxy for his first wife, and he sealed him to his first wife as well as sealing him to his second wife in Brigham Young's office. So these are the kinds of stories that you find out there when you start looking and going back into some of the histories of these people. There was a tramp that came to his back door one day. Peter had this great big black horse, and he always had a big black snake whip that he carried around the saddle horn. And this tramp, they called him a bum or something, and he came to the back door of the house and was begging for food. So Peter's wife went in and fixed him a cheese sandwich. And she took it out to him, and he took one bite and threw it in the dirt and said, don't you have anything else? Well, just about that time, Peter came up on his horse. He took that black whip off of his horse, and he walked over to that man. He said, you pick that up right now, and you eat the whole thing while I'm standing here, or I'm going to whip you. Well, needless to say, that tramp picked up the sandwich and ate it, and then scurried off really fast because he didn't want to face that bullwhip that Peter had. So these are just some of the stories of those. We talked about the marriage there. Now, to the heart of what we want to talk about here tonight, importance of record keeping and keeping your history. Brad Clayton, some of you may remember him. He was a national president a few years back. He was a highway patrol trooper, lived out in the Twilla area at the time, and he was telling us about why record keeping is important. He says, when I'm a trooper and I pull somebody over on the highway and write them a ticket and an incident report, if that incident report lacks anything related to the story, when we go to court and that report is filed with the judge. Hello? Okay. When that report is filed with the judge, if it's not written in that report and you try to say something and add something to it, you're too late. It didn't happen. So he was referring to that as, if you don't write it, it didn't happen. So if you want people to know about your life and not forget about you in another 50 or 60 years, you need to write something to leave a paper trail behind you that tells about your life and who you are and your thoughts and your feelings and those kinds of things. President Kimball made this statement, prophetic promise. People often use the excuse that their lives are uneventful and nobody would be interested in what they have done. But I promise you that if you will keep your journals and records, they will indeed be a source of great inspiration to your families, to your children, your grandchildren, and others on through the generations. And how true is that? I mean, sometimes it's hard for us to realize it. Why would my grandchildren, why would my great-grandchildren, I got great-grandchildren now, and they're 4, 5, and 6 years old, and a little bit younger than that. But if I died tomorrow, would they know anything about me? I would hope that they would. I would hope that their parents or their grandparents would tell them stories, but I don't know. So I feel a necessity and an urgency to record some things related to my life. Well, ways to start: use a journal prompt, make a list of things that bring you joy. Record the small things you're grateful for. Or write down a memory you don't want to forget. Get creative. Start doodling and just see what comes out. Scratch what you see around, or sketch what you see around. Try to write a poem. There are no rules. Think outside the box. And write with a reason. Make a record for your kids. Start a gratitude journal. Write through what is causing you stress or other hardships in your life. Let me just share some of the things that I have done since becoming a son of Utah Pioneers with regards to record keeping. Many of you are familiar with the program called Storyworth. Any of you been doing that program? Got one or two over here. Storyworth, and I don't get a commission on trying to sell these things, but for about $100, you sign up with Storyworth, and each week they will send you a question that you don't need to answer it. And if you don't like the question, you can make up your own question. And that's what I did on a lot of these, because they didn't say, when were you baptized as a member of the church? That's not one of their questions, but I want my children to know and the others to know when and how and why I was baptized a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I talk in here about my missions that I've served. I talk in here about my priesthood ordinations, and thank goodness for my mother. She saved every scrap of paper that ever had my name on it from the time I was just a toddler. If you want to know what time I ran in the high school track meet for the low hurdles against Bear River High School in 1964, she's got a piece of paper with that on it because the newspaper published all that stuff. So I have a whole trunk full of records that my mother kept, and I've been using those to do this Storyworth program. At the end of that year, those 52 weeks, they will take those stories, they will bind them in a book, and they will send you one copy, black and white copy. The hook is, if you want it in color, they're $100 a piece. And then, so if you have a lot of children, you might want to think twice. But I got one for each of my 6 children for volume 1, and then I felt like there were other things I wanted to say, and I did a volume 2, which had the same kinds of things in them. Some of them were things like, how did you feel about your grandmother? How did you feel, what were your parents' first stories that they told you? And things like that. Career things, education things. I found a little shoebox one day that had a few of my father's papers in it, a birth certificate, a death certificate, some of his awards that he got, his military service, service awards from his employment, and those kinds of things. And I was able to take all of those and piece together with my own memories a sketch of my father's life. And you think, who would care about that? Well, let me tell you, I did this. I gave them all to my children and my grandchildren. And one of my grandchildren said, Grandpa, my ministering brother came to our house the other day, and he lives in Syracuse, up where the new temple was just dedicated. And he said he looked down at the coffee table, and I had Grandpa's life sketch there, and that his ministering brother said, how do you know him? And he says, well, he's my grandfather. He says, well, I grew up just 2 doors down from him. How do you know him? And so it's just one of those things that it's not just our own families that have the opportunity to read and to hear those things, but other people as well. Just a couple of other quick things here, and I know our time is getting short. I told you that all 16 of my great-grandparents were pioneers. So I went back to Family Search, and in Family Search, I went to the Pierce and the Kilfoyle lines. My father is a Pierce, and my grandfather was a Pierce, and his wife, my grandmother, was a Kilfoyle from Ireland. And I went in and looked at all 16 of my great-grandparents. And then I made a summary sheet for each one of them on what ships they took to come to America, who they traveled with, what wagon trains or handcarts they came to the West, where they settled, and compiled all of those records into a volume for my Pierce Kilfoyle side of the family. And you'll see it's not that thick, but there's a lot of good stuff in here, a lot of stories and a lot of pictures that were on Family Search. And then I went to the Nicholas Stokes line, which is my mother's line, and you'll see it's a lot bigger. But I took all of that material and put it together, and then I went up to the Weber State bookstore, printing office, and had them print them up, and it was really cheap. And so I was able to do copies for all of my first cousins and all of my children to get one of these for each one of them, and then have some others left over as well. So there are things that we can do that will help us to record our memories and record stories in our life. Now, I want to share just a couple of things with you here. Take another 5 or 6 minutes. Dave Hinton reminded me how I knew him today, and he may not remember this, but in a couple of national meetings ago, I gave a poem that I'd adapted from Flanders Field. You remember that? He said, after that, he came up and he says, I'm going to make you famous. And I'm still waiting, Dave, to be famous. But one of the ways that I could record stories from my life was to put it in poetry form. I'm not a great poet. Some people say you're a poet. I said, no, I'm a rhymer. I mean, I can rhyme and I can get meter, but I don't perform the cowboy poetry, but I have read some on occasion. But I want to share just a couple of those with you that are true stories, and then maybe a couple of lies that go along with it. This is a true story. I have some friends who live out in Grouse Creek. Anybody know where Grouse Creek is? It's clear up in the northwest corner of Utah, out in the middle of nowhere. And so the Tanner brothers are out there. They've lived there for a few generations, and I became friends with them, and they would invite me out to herd cows and to help doctor and vaccinate and all those kinds of things. And it was just the thrill of my life. I'd go out and spend 3 or 4 days, maybe 2 or 3 weekends in the fall, and the same in the spring. And I just look forward to that so much. So one day we gathered the cows and the calves, and we were vaccinating the calves and earmarking them and all those kinds of things that you do. And this is the story about that experience. Each spring and fall, I take a jaunt to a place like no other, a place where cares are left behind and everyone treats you like a brother. I load my horse, the Yellow Dun. He's my partner in this effort. I trailer him for 200 miles across the High Plains Desert. I've been helping with the cattle for about 8 or 9 years. Today I'm part of the ground crew, grabbing calves by their ears. We work the calves and doctor them, dehorn, earmark, and vaccinate, give them a dose of growth hormone, hot brand their hide, and castrate. Sorry, ladies. Bovines and I, we get along. We have an understanding about near everything except vaccinations and branding. It was my turn to give the shots, administer the serum. I would lift up the left front leg and stick the needle in them. The last calf was an ornery cuss, but we meant him no harm. He kicked and fussed an awful lot, and the needle went right in my arm. I got a full dose of 8-way vaccine. I'll never get bovine flu. Black leg will not be my demise, but at night I sometimes moo. The follow-on to that poem was that I got home that night after about 5 or 6 hours, and I walked in the house and then saw my arm, and it was swelled up about twice the size as it normally would. And I think, shooting that, we don't change the needle every time we shoot a calf. We use the same needle for 100 calves. And so I got all kinds of bugs in that needle when it went in my arm besides the vaccines. So she takes me down to the Ogden Clinic and takes me in there, and they said, oh, well, I think we got you here in time. We're not going to get blood poisoning. We'll give you a shot of gamma globulin or something like that. It looked like honey in a huge syringe. And they said, you're going to have to drop your drawers, and we'll send the nurse in to give you your shot. Well, I was a bishop of a young single adult ward there at Weber State University, and she was working the nurse shift that night. And she was out there in the foyer, and I thought, if I drop my drawers and she comes in to give me that vaccination, I have to request somebody else. Well, thank goodness it wasn't her that came in. So I got my vaccination too. And then I went outside and I said, Elizabeth, if you would have come in there, I was not going to get that shot. She said, Bishop, if they would have asked me to go do that, I would not come in to give you that shot. But that's just one little story of an episode that happened in my life that I was able to put in a rhyming format that is just, even though I wasn't real happy about it at the time, it's just one of those heartwarming stories. Let me do 1 or 2 more here. Now, here's another one. It's, I often thought when I was out there working the calves, what's going through their minds? And I tried to put myself in their position, and so during that process, I said, maybe I'll just write a little poem about what I think those calves are thinking. I awoke at dawn's first rays of light. The sun slowly washed o'er the range. I was looking forward to the day, but something in the air seemed strange. It started when the Dodge trucks rolled in and offloaded all the horses. The smell of smoke filled the morning air, and there was a disturbance in the forces. Ropers lassoed one or two hind legs and dragged the calves to the fire. An old ranch hand knelt upon each one's neck. It was against each calf's desire. They stamp and brand upon the rump to identify the owner. Singed hair and hide will forever mark each steer, each cow, and heifer. Branding the hip is not all they do. They tag an ear and vaccinate. They cut the cheek to form a dewlap, and they slice and dice and emasculate. Steroids are used to build up mass. They put more meat upon the bone. An injection of a small white pill gives calves a dose of growth hormone. It may seem fun to the old cow hands, but to the calves, they're all filled with fear. How do I know? I'll tell you, friend, because today I became a steer. Well, maybe if you'll indulge me, just one more here. This one's a little bit longer, but this is... The other one? I won't. Okay. This is called Snake Bit, and this is in honor of Dave Ison. You know, Dave Ison thinks he's a cowboy. Look at his boots that he's got on there tonight, and his jeans, and he kept bugging me for a while back to take him on a cattle drive and to go up and gather cattle. And so this is a story about Dave and I when we went up to gather cattle. There are certain times when herding cows, your knees can take no more. Just staying in that concrete saddle becomes a major chore. Dave and I were fetching lost cows up by Croydon Meadowway when feeling left and legs went numb. On the back of a horse, we could not stay. Dave started searching for a special spot where he could sit a spell, rub his knees and stretch them out until they were feeling well. A big aspen log beckoned to him. It was truly a welcoming sight, a place to park his behind, and to gain a little respite. As he was getting ready to sit, a rattler began to buzz. That moment became frozen in time, the longest there ever was. Dave was as still as a bronze statue. If he moved, he would get bit. He couldn't just sit there forever. We didn't even have a snakebite kit. Sure enough, that rattler strunk his rump. The pain was like a hot fire, and fear came into Dave's red, bleary eyes, and he said, getting help was his only desire. Dave yelled and cried for me to render aid. I came running at full speed. The pain was so excruciating, and the wound was starting to bleed. Neither of us knew quite to do. Dave said, take my cell phone and call the doc. He'll tell you how to treat this snake bite. I'll just rest here by this rock. I dialed the doc's number and I quickly explained the situation. Doc said there's only one remedy to get out all the poison. You must cut an X on each bite mark, then suck out all the poison. If you do not, then Dave will die. Of that there's little doubt. Hurry now and do the foul deed. I may not have much time, he said. If you don't suck out all the poison, my life's not worth a dime. I hung up and asked of me, Dave asked of me, what did Doc say? Now do not lie. I just looked real sad and then spoke up. Doc said, you're gonna die. Well, Dave didn't die from that snake bite on his tush so round and fair. It really was no snake bite at all. He'd sat on a prickly pear. You're all very kind. What did I do with my clicker here? Probably put it in my pocket over here. I got two of them, just in case. So, I guess this is the one. These are some ways to record your history. You can do it through poetry, you can collect the stories, you can do a chronological order, as I mentioned before. These were some of these I didn't do. Some of them are a little longer, but poetry is one way that I've been able to record some of the stories in my life. And yesterday, in the Ogden Standard Examiner, I was reading an editorial, a commentary by this lady. The picture is up here, and I just want to read you the last two paragraphs of her commentary. Her commentary is, "Today is the day to start your life history. Each of us face daily trials, deal with them, and make something of our lives, while thoughts flow through our minds, insights develop, and wisdom grows. Those are the things our families will want to know, along with how we viewed our world and handled its challenges. No one can write your life history better than you can, and you don't want anyone else to try. Start with one paragraph, and in time, discover the most intriguing person you'll ever know." This is a true statement, and I thought that was so appropriate when that came out in yesterday's paper. I have one more poem here for you. It's called "A Place Like No Other." I know a place that is like no other, where they treat you like a friend and brother. A place where you always are welcome. A place where you can feel at home. The grass is green, the flowers bloom, there is feeling of peace, not gloom. Gardens grow with water clear, the air is fresh throughout the year. If you close your eyes, you can just might hear the sounds of days gone by and all past years. Horses' hooves, the baa of sheep, the cattle lowing, neighbors greeting each other and the women sewing. In summer you can smell the new mown hay. The canyon breeze cools you at the end of day. Families feel safe, no need to fear. Visitors often say, "I could live here." A place where I could raise a family, a place that has its own majesty, a place beloved by saints who came. This place is called Hurricane. Thank you for having me here, brothers and sisters. It's been a pleasure, it's been fun, and we appreciate your hospitality, and hope to come back sometime again maybe and finish up on some of these poems. Thank you so much. You want to hear the watering trough? Okay, now, you know cowboy poetry sometimes can get a little risky or risque, but I will read this because you said you wanted to hear it. This is a story about my grandmother and grandfather Nicholas. They homesteaded out in Promontory, Utah, which is out by the shores of the Great Salt Lake in western Box Elder County. And that's where my mother was born and grew up out there. And so this is one of those poems that I wrote. I don't know if it happened or not, but I think that it probably could have. It's called "The Watering Trough," or "Thank God for Buckskin Spring." Grandpa piped the water in 1925 to quench the small herd's thirst. Grandma threatened him with his life if he didn't run it to the house first. It came from high on Maple Ridge. Its source was Buckskin Spring. Cool water running to the house made Grandma dance and sing. He ran it to the water trough. The stock drank with great haste. They slurped, lapped, and sipped it up. They did not want to waste. Good water is, in this arid clime, is not a thing to squander. Without it very close at hand, the stock is forced to wander. A trough is used for many things: a drink, a swim, to bathe, perhaps a chance to freshen up, or maybe even shave. It's rumored Grandma skinny dipped after the sun went down. She even dipped during the day when all the men had gone to town. One night while resting at the trough, Grandma fell fast asleep. Under a summer's midnight sky, she lay there counting sheep. She reposed there with nothing on, no doubt about her gender. Grandma was a real good looker in all her feminine splendor. Grandpa returned home and found her there, awash in pale moonlight. He pondered what sly trick to play that wouldn't cause a fight. Heck, Grandma was plain buck naked, except for Grandpa's ring. He gazed on her bare nakedness, fondly remembering the times when they first married and children came along. They never did get fame or wealth, but hearts were full of song. Now Grandpa was a gentleman in spite of his rough ways. He always looked for ways to ease when Grandma had tough days. A hair ribbon fetched from the house, he quickly did his best to tie it in a big blue bow and placed it on her breast. Next morning when the rooster crowed, she woke with great surprise. I don't know where I've been or what I did, but I'm glad I won first prize. Grandpa still reflects upon that night. Grandma still wears his ring. Every night he kneels in earnest prayer, thanking God for Buckskin Springs.
Thank you very much. Thank you to you two young women for your essays and stuff that you wrote there. I'm a little worried though, going to BYU and up to Washington, D.C. You might be a poet before you know it. Okay. But just give everybody one more hand.
I have to say one thing about something he said about me. I did tell him that I'd make him famous, that he was supposed to send me the poem. I never got it.
Dave, you got a copy of yours?
I'll give it to him.
You better do.
I never said when.
No, it's probably in one of these books here. Okay, thanks again. We'll ask Don Gibson, there he is, to give our closing prayer, and then those that can stay around and help me out, we appreciate it.
Our Father, which art in heaven, we're thankful for this wonderful evening that we've been able to share together. Thankful for the stories that have been told and the essays that were read, the remembrances of our forefathers as they've been brought to our minds this evening. We ask thy blessing upon each of us that we might take to heart the counsel that has been given to write our stories and our histories, that our posterity might know us in the days that are to follow. We ask thy blessing now, Father, as we return to our homes, we'll be able to do so safely. We say this in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.